Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 118 of the USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Ersman, and once again, so grateful for your time today as we dive into another episode. And speaking of that, this will actually be the final episode of 2024. We're taking a week off, the week between Christmas and New Year's, as I hope you are as well. So thank you for listening along with us as we had another year together. Just been another really great year of episodes, so thank you so much for listening. So other than Lead Pods, the other main communication arm of USMB is the Christian Leader magazine. Many of you hopefully receive that and read that on a regular basis. And so today we're kind of going behind the scenes of the Christian Leader a little bit. And we're talking with Connie Faber and Janae Shafer, the editor and associate editor of the Christian Leader magazine. They both do such a great job putting together that publication. And as we talk about today, you'll hear later on, it's an award-winning publication many times over. And in this age that we're in, where there's definitely no shortage of content to consume, in this episode we talk about why having a denominational magazine at all is important, what their goals are, and how it can kind of bring us together as a family of churches. And honestly, I think you'll be interested to kind of get at that peek behind the curtain, because Janae and Connie are forced to work many, many months in advance, and they have quite the process to get these issues cranked out 6 times a year. We have writers from around the country, literally around the world. We have a couple different committees that are involved, and it's quite the process to get this magazine put together. So this week, Connie and Janae kind of tell us some of those behind the scenes things. We hear some of the history about Christian Leader and really about journalism overall from Connie, and maybe a few sneak peeks about what's to come ahead. So this is a fun one. I think you'll enjoy this one. So after a quick break, we'll get to my conversation about the Christian Leader with Connie Faber and Janae Shafer.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Mennonite Central Committee. Sometimes the best gifts are ones that you can't simply pull off a shelf. To celebrate Jesus' birth this Christmas, choose gifts that change lives and provide for families. Choose from a piglet, ducks, wells, and more. Give comfort and joy for the world. Donate at mcc.org/delight.
All right, friends. Well, today I'm very excited to have 2 friends of mine on the show with us today. And if you haven't, I'm guessing most of you know these people. You've probably talked with them in person, but if not, I'm guessing you've at least read their words before. So today I'm excited to be joined by the majority of the staff of the Christian Leader magazine. So we've got Connie Faber and Janae Shafer with us today. And I'm just so excited to get to know you both a little bit better, for us to introduce you to our audience. So thank you both for being on with us today. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Connie, you've been in Christian Leader world for a long time. So let's start with you, Connie. So can you give us just a little bio of who you are, how long you've been involved with the Christian Leader, and anything else that you'd like to share?
I joined the Christian Leader staff in 1994 and worked for Don Ratzlaff, who was the editor and had been for quite a while. I went to college with him, so that was fun. And then when he moved on, Carmen Andrus became the editor, and I worked with her. That was different. Her office was in California for a while, and then it was on the East Coast. So we did long distance working together, saw each other occasionally. And then I became the editor in 2004. And so have done that for 20 years. I live in Hillsborough, Kansas. My husband teaches at Tabor, and we go to Abenfeld MB Church.
Awesome. Cool. We'll dive into some specifics here in just a minute. But Janae, great to have you as well. So why don't you explain what your role with the Christian Leader is?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. It's great to be here. I'm Janae Shafer. I live in Wichita, Kansas. I got married within the last year. I'm not quite sure when the episode will come out, but one thing that some people might not know about me is that I get to work from home. So that's a really great benefit of the job. Is even though I moved, I used to live in Hillsborough for over 10 years, Hillsborough, Kansas. And even with all the move and getting married, I got to keep my job. So yeah, I've been on staff with the Christian Leader since 2017. At that time, I was hired as the part-time assistant editor, and I became the associate editor in 2020 when I kind of took more ownership of the news briefs and body life departments. I'm sure we'll probably talk more about the different departments, but I also lead the church life and testimony columns. So I live in Wichita, like I said, married to Austin, and we attend Ridgepoint.
Cool. You both do such a great job with the magazine. So let's just kind of dive into some more specifics. So again, for people who read on a regular basis, or maybe even just occasionally, they probably don't have a very good handle of, first of all the work that goes into each issue, which we'll get into here in just a minute. But also they may not fully understand like what is an editor, what is an associate editor, where do all the writers come from? Obviously, Aaron Box is in the mix now. He's got a pretty important role with the magazine. You've got a couple committees. So there's kind of a lot of work that happens behind the scenes before you get your paper in the mail. So Connie, maybe I'll start with you, Connie. Can you explain like what your role versus Janae's and how do some of these other people in these roles kind of come into play?
Okay, so the editor is responsible ultimately for what you hold in your hands every 2 months. So I work specifically with the feature department and the columns, except for testimony, because that's one Janae just personally enjoys doing. So she works with helping people tell a personal story. I also work with advertisers and just the schedule of the magazine, the various proofreaders. I work with the designer, make sure our bills are paid. So that's what the editor does. Well, Janae, maybe you could say what you do, and I can jump back in and talk about the committees we work with.
Yeah,
Mhm.
sure. So, like I mentioned before, I do the news brief section, which is basically just short little snippets of USMB news from our colleges, agencies like ICOM and Multiply. That's kind of one way that we keep people informed of activities and events in our conference. So we get some press releases from time to time, and I'll condense those and then compile them for news briefs. Kind of aim for about 200 words brief, so it's pretty short. But we do publish longer versions of those stories online and via our newsletter, Speedlink. Connie mentioned the testimony column. I do work with the people who share their stories with us. This is a great way for people to share ways that God's working in their lives. Could be their coming to faith story, but doesn't have to be. It could be lessons learned along the way. We've shared about people who have gone through really difficult circumstances and their stories aren't necessarily wrapped up yet, but God is working even in the midst of that. So a lot of times people write that themselves, but then I'll work with them on polishing that. The body life department is another area where I take the lead. That's been for the last 4 years. And Body Life has stories from our USMB churches. It's 7 pages of content. We kind of look for unique ways that churches are reaching out to their communities, maybe partnering with each other across districts, highlighting that connection that we have among the USMB conference. It's also where you'll read more in-depth stories about some of our new leaders, like we recently featured our new national director, Aaron Box, and things like that. So yeah, I typically write 1 to 3 of those stories in every issue, and then we assign the rest to our freelance writers. And so as the associate editor, I am kind of in charge of working with the freelance writers too on here's your assignment for this time. Here's some things we're interested in knowing, kind of communicating, being the liaison between the church and the freelance writers. So yeah, and then church life is the last thing that I do, which features baptisms, memberships, new church workers, obituaries. I kind of think of it like the old society pages in the newspaper where publish who's doing what, who's visiting, kind of like that. And I was kind of surprised. So we do a readership survey every once in a while. And I thought it was interesting. In 2021, news briefs and church life are 2 of our most regularly read sections of the magazine. So
Wow.
those little details of who's doing what.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, that's cool. So Connie, I think you were going to talk about the committees and then also even just the writers. I think people might be interested to know you don't really have, except for you two, you don't really have a team of staff writers. You look out and across the denomination, across the country, across the world, really, to get people to write these pieces. So can you explain some of that behind the scenes section as well?
Sure. So 2-3 years ago, we started working with the editorial committee, which is a group of 6 people plus Janae and I and the national director. And this group of people works on planning what I would call the editorial calendar, the content of the feature department of the magazine. Prior to that, we had the Board of Communications, and they kind of did had oversight over the Christian leader in general and any kind of communication that the U.S. conference was involved with. And then when the U.S. conference downsized its boards, that board went away and we were without sort of general MB people to work with, and we just did it ourselves. And so a couple of years ago, that was reintroduced, and there's 6 people, and we get together once a year, face to face, and plan out about a year's worth or 6 to 9 topics that we wanted then cover during that time period. And the editorial committee not only picks the theme, but they pick specific topics that they want to include in that general theme. And then who would be a good writer for that topic. So, for example, in September and October, we had an issue on politics, and this committee wanted to include someone who was involved in state government and the perspective of someone from the U.S. who's not living in our country right now. So you will have read those stories. November and December, we focused on young adults in the church. The committee wanted to have a young adult write about their experience in the local church. And they also wanted us to include first-person reflections from high school students who were involved. In our case, we focused on church mission trips. So those were some ideas that the committee had about that topic. And then in the January-February issue, we are focusing on the 500th anniversary of the development of Anabaptism. And again, the committee had a specific suggestion on that one, in addition to the history, which was to give a global perspective of what's the U.S. or what's the Mennonite Brethren slice of the Anabaptist family, and how do we look globally? And so we work on that in a 3-day meeting, and then we follow up with emails and Zoom phone calls when we need them. And it's been really nice to have a group of people to think with on some of these things, because 2 heads are better than 1, so why not 6 heads? And it's been really good to have that. Then we have a review committee. So, I should backtrack. So the editorial committee comes up with a theme and the specific topics they want, and then the editor finds the writers. And sometimes it takes a couple of tries because, as you said, Matt, our writers are people who are pastors. They have a job in an area that gives them an expertise on a topic we want to address. So they have stuff going on. They don't write books necessarily, or always, busy writing articles for other publications. So they need to squeeze this in their lives, and they don't always have time. So we allow I give myself quite a bit of time to find the writers, and then we give them about a month to put out a first draft. Then we do some editing on that, and then the second draft goes to a review committee. Now, this is a group of right now 4 people who read the feature articles for theological perspective and content. So the questions they basically ask is the content in line with the USMB Confession of Faith? And the second question is, if this is a topic that has a variety of opinions, if it's a topic that U.S. Mennonite Brethren have a variety of opinions on, have we covered several of those perspectives? And so that's what they're reading for. So we give them about 2 to 3 weeks to read. Right now, those readers are district ministers. And one district, the district minister asked a pastor, an experienced pastor, to be the reader, and then the national director. So they read and give feedback, and then we give the writers time to make a final round of changes. And this process assumes that we might need to add an article or replace an article. So this gets a little bit long because we want to give that person some time to write if we need to. So then the articles are all hopefully done, and I write a headline, make sure that, all of the graphics, I work with the graphic designer on that. Sometimes I write a headline that is too long, so then we sit by her computer and rewrite something, and hope it makes as much sense thinking on the fly as it did when I thought long and hard about it. And then the designer has about 3 weeks to work on her part of it. And then we give the proofreaders 2 days to read the magazine and make changes. The print shop has 10 working days to print it and get it ready and delivered to the post office. And from start to finish, that's about 4 months to 6 months, depending. So it takes a while. Now, the news is different. We plan that each issue. So we give ourselves, I don't know, Janae, six weeks that you and the writers have.
About 6 weeks to 2 months.
Yeah. So for the January, February issue, I started working on that one and contacting writers in the middle of July. And I have decorated my office for Christmas in summer just to get me in the mood when we have a Christmas theme.
Well, okay. So while we're there, Connie, so peek behind the curtain, full disclosure, I'm on the editorial committee, so I'm in these meetings with you guys. And I think for the average reader, the average MB church attender, I mean, again, they just don't think about how much work goes into something like a magazine, right? So they probably think like, oh, Connie asked this pastor to write an article, and it probably takes a few weeks, and then it just magically arrives in my house, right? There's not this. I think for people who haven't been in some of these behind the scenes meetings, they don't understand, first of all, how far ahead you work. And I mean, you just spelled out the process. There's a lot of steps that have to go out. And so you have kind of this master calendar, which most people might have an anxiety attack by just glancing at it. But again, you don't need to you did a good job kind of walking through the process. But can you just spell it out a little bit more of how far in advance you all are working, how many steps ahead you are, which issues you're currently working on versus what people are actually reading? I think people would find that interesting. Can you just expand a little bit on that?
Okay. So let's take the November, December issue, because talking here, that's the one that we just recently completed. So
Yep.
I
Okay.
started shopping for writers in the middle of May. So think about how many months that is. It took a while to nail people down. One of the people that wrote was a college student, and she was in the midst of packing up and going home and then starting her summer internship. And then she was on a missions trip, and it took a while for us to connect and then for her to write because she was pretty busy. So it felt super early, but in fact, it really wasn't. So that's always a little bit strange to be asking people for something so far in advance. So I do try to explain that there is a process that we have now, and we want to give everybody enough time to do their part so they can do it well and still keep up with the other responsibilities that they have in life.
Yeah.
We have some colleagues who work in Christian publication. They have committee meetings to write headlines. They have big staffs, and they take lots of time. They maybe publish a journal 4 times a year, and they spend a lot of time doing what we do with 2 part-time people. And in some respects, we do it very quickly. We are publishing something six times a year. We do recognize that we aren't working with professional writers. And that's okay. So our job is to help you as a writer say what you want to say really well. So what does an editor do? I think part of what we do is just help people communicate what they want to say. It isn't what I want to say or the story Janae wants to tell. We want to help the person tell their story, write their perspective on something. And then one of the things that I have learned over the years is that you don't want to discourage somebody who's reading. And things like misspellings, complicated sentences, boring words. I mean, there's lots of things. Weird punctuation, that just throws people off. Inconsistency.
Yeah.
This article is punctuated this way, and this one's punctuated a different way. So we try to be consistent because that keeps people reading. And we want our writers to be read. So editors edit.
Yeah.
So that people can communicate as successfully as I remember a gentleman came into my office several years ago, and he handed me a letter to the editor, and he said, well, you're not going to publish this because you won't agree with it. And I read it, and I did not agree with it. But I said, of course we're going to publish it. I don't only publish what I agree with. This is your chance to say what you think, because the Christian leader is for the people who are part of USMB churches. So I just want you to say it well. It's not my job to have someone say it the way I think it should be, as long as it's, within our confession of faith. That's probably the only, criteria. And what this man wrote was not outside of the confession, but yeah, I didn't agree with it. That doesn't mean it didn't get published, because it did.
Well, okay, that brings up a really good point. I think it might be helpful for you, either of you, both of you, to kind of just give your understanding of what is the purpose of the Christian Leader magazine, and what's the value of having a denominational magazine. Because like you just said, you're not only looking for people who are lockstep in agreement with you two as individuals, and we try to stay within the confession, but there's a little bit of freedom and leeway there. And some people might say something like, oh, like I read Christianity Today, or I'm up with Carrie Newhoff's latest blog post or whatever. So why do we need a MB specific publication? Because I actually let's hear from both of you. Why does a Christian Leader exist, and why do you think there's a value in having a denomination specific publication?
Well, I do have the purpose of the Christian Leader. We have 3 Ds, that kind of alliteration. I'll just kind of read them here. The purpose of the Christian Leader is to draw our USMB churches together. I mean, we connect with churches, kind of like what I mentioned before. We inform through news briefs and other ways. We celebrate, we tell stories, and it's a way to share news with people. So drawing our churches together is one reason, or one purpose. We disciple the USMB within the confession of faith, like Connie mentioned. We inspire people to action sometimes. So that could be another. And then the 3rd D is we direct our USMB family toward this unified vision. We focus on our 3 core commitments: disciple making, leadership development, and church multiplication. So we try to, in each issue, try to highlight those core commitments, ways our churches are doing that. I have one recent example, we heard of a Sunday school class that was doing some interesting things. So that's a story we're currently pursuing right now about individual congregations are, discipling their people, or developing leaders, or multiplying churches. So
I think sometimes, I enjoy reading magazines for the general Christian reader, Christianity Today, and other magazines like that. But the Christian Leader is the only place that you can read Mennonite Brethren writers from the U.S. So one of my goals is that when you read a Christian Leader magazine, that you could go to a church and find that person. It's not going to be somebody that is really well known, but is not part of a Mennonite Brethren church. So we rarely tell stories about things outside of the MB church families, the local church events. We seldom use writers that are not attending an MB church. So now there are times when we do, because there are topics that we want to explore, and we need experts, and Mennonite Brethren don't always have experts in every area. And some people just have good perspectives we want to hear. But generally, it's the place where you can find out what Mennonite Brethren think about things. We can get to know each other and what we think. So I think that's the reason why denominational magazines are important, is it's a place where we connect with each other. It's also a place where if you're someone who would like to be a writer, you can get your start. It's always fun to submit something and have it accepted. And you try to publish anything submitted to us by someone that is part of an MB church, because that's where else are you going to, get a chance to get started at something like that. So we want to recognize the gifts of people among us who write, and give them a chance to express themselves in the publication. When Mennonite Brethren first came to the United States from Russia, they were here maybe 10 years. And they had been used to living really close together in sort of compact communities. And when they got here, they were spread out. They were in 5 states. They had 18 churches, 11 churches in 5 states, and they felt disconnected. So they started a publication. It was just 4 pages. It wasn't what it is now, but that's how they got started, because they wanted to connect to each other. And when we do our readership surveys every 5 years, one of the things that readers specifically are asked is, what do you think the purpose of the Christian leader is? And the answers that they write in generally have to do with being informed and connected to each other. So that's what we try to do. And I like to say that the Christian Leader magazine is for the readers, not the denominational leaders. So we are a magazine that is produced by people who read it and tell stories from the perspective of pew people. So I figure if Janae and I find it interesting and we can understand what is being said in an article, then we're good to go. If the language gets a little bit too specialized, well, then the writer needs to probably find a different word, because in his or her profession, that phrase makes sense, but not for the pew person. We don't get it.
Right.
So I think we're pretty good tests of whether something works, because we're just pew people too. This is just what our job is.
Yeah, I think you guys handled that really, really well. And you said something a few times I want to dive into a little bit deeper now that I know. So if for people who work at let's say a big newspaper or like a city newspaper or definitely like a national paper of any kind, journalism has just changed significantly. I mean, in the past couple of years, let alone the last 30 years, Connie, that you've been in journalism. So one of the things that I feel for you in is that news and stories happen so quickly now, and something that might be relevant today may not feel relevant tomorrow, let alone 6 months from now when you're having to look 6 months ahead. So I remember in the past week, like I was involved with some conversations about, AI or tech or maybe like if we want to talk about the war in Russia or whatever, like there's things that we want to talk about now, but when we look ahead to when people will actually get the magazine, it's just really hard to project what the war will look like in 6 months, right? And I think that's only getting faster and faster. The world just changes so fast, which makes print journalism really hard. So I guess, Connie, especially with your history and your perspective, can you just talk about that a little bit? And how does a print magazine deal with just the rapidly changing world that we're in right now?
Well, I think part of what we do just practically is we have a website. We've had that for quite a while now. And maybe by now it's maybe only 10 years ago, we started biweekly news digest. And so that helps. So if something happens, we can get something out really quickly. If I get something in an emailed to me in the morning, I can have it online in the afternoon, and Janae sends out the social media, post, and so people have access to it. During COVID, we were super busy. There was always, it was a moving target all of the time. And even though we were sitting at home, we were communicating with people in churches, and we had weekly emails that went out then, just because we were trying to help people navigate as congregations. How are we as U.S. Mennonite Brethren responding to this? Because it was so atypical of anything we had experience with. And so I think we made really good use of our resources and the fact that we could put things online. And those sorts of timely news never made it to the magazine, because as you said, it was just too far out. But we could put things online. I think one of the ways that a magazine like the Christian Leader can address those things is sort of the bigger issues that's behind something. When I was looking through my archive collection here of magazines, I was looking for something the other day, and I happened to see the article that we did after the Oklahoma City bombing. That was, I don't know how many years ago that was by now. It was a long time. And we wrestled with the question then, how do you forgive? And how should this man who destroyed a building and all the lives that were lost, how do we react to him? How do we punish him? What does the Bible want us to do with something like that? And so that wasn't about the event itself, but that was several months later, thinking about that. So I think that's one thing, one way that we can do that. We did that a little bit with, for example, the war in Ukraine. Boris Wright, what is it like to be hospitable, to be neighborly, how do you respond to people in your sort of cultural family that are displaced? And it's those are long-term problems that we have to solve. They're not short-term ones. So we can look at it from the long view. I wish sometimes we were a daily, newspaper, because that would be fun. That's a different sort of challenge than what we have, which is to figure out a way to look at it from a distance.
Yeah. Janae, anything you want to add to that? Because I know that obviously affects your role a lot too, the timeliness versus just the reality of deadlines. And you kind of mentioned the email newsletter that's called C-Link, right? So anything else you want to say about C-Link or the website or just the reality of that grind, Janae?
Yeah, I mean, they say the one thing that never goes away is deadlines, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think print and digital can work together really well, because there is something to be said, I think. I mean, I'm in the millennial generation. I still like to hold a physical copy of something in my hands. But like Connie was saying, there is a challenge of being timely. And that's where I think C-Link, which is email that we send, is really helpful. Another example recently is with the hurricane in North Carolina, which is there. And so we were able to put some stories online, get those sent out via email, to where, I mean, we haven't had a magazine since then. So breaking news, that was really helpful, I think, to be able to get the stories out. But yeah, I mean, I think C-Link is one thing that we want more people to be aware of. In our latest readership survey, I think 46% of responders didn't know what C-Link is. And so just wanted to make people aware that we have this resource. It's usually a collection of 4 or 5 articles. We compile them with short summaries, send them via email. Like I say, it's usually once every other week, something like that. And it's a really easy way to stay informed. Some of those C-Link stories do get condensed for news briefs, but if you want to be more on the breaking end of things, sign up for C-Link.
Well, we should just spill it out. So if people do want to do that or check out the online edition, it's christianleadermag.com, right? So check that out and you can sign up for C-Link there. And which brings me to the next thing. I know I've heard a little bit of confusion over the years of just subscriptions. Like, how do subscriptions work? How do I get a copy? Do I automatically get a copy? Who chooses who gets a copy? All those kinds of things. Can one of you explain how all that works?
If you attend a Mennonite Brethren church in the United States, you can receive the Christian Leader at no charge. All you have to do is, if you don't already receive it, you can go to our website and there's a sign up button or sign up link on the top right-hand corner, and just go through that process. It's a little bit complicated right now, maybe for some people, because you don't have to pay. So we're working with the website folks to make that a little clearer, but you don't have to pay if you go to an MB church. So just don't worry about that part of it. And then you'll receive the magazine that way. There are some churches that go ahead and send us a mailing list updated every year. And we really appreciate that, because that sort of takes it out of the reader's hands. The church office just takes care of it for everybody. But not every church wants to do that. So then people can just go online and subscribe. And if you don't attend a USMB church, you can also go online and subscribe, and you just pay for it online. But it's a pretty decent rate. It's not super expensive. And then C-Link is also free for people. And we do some things special just for folks who sign up for C-Link. Sometimes there are, like, we do something at Christmas and we only send it to the people who are subscribers, so they get Advent emails from us. So
Awesome. That's great. Well, it's obviously just a huge beneficial resource to everyone in our USMB family. So I think, yeah, if you aren't subscribed, go do that right now. Go sign up because I think you'll enjoy it. It's good information.
Yeah.
So Connie, another kind of big picture question for you. We kind of were talking about this earlier, but journalism just has changed so much since you've started. And
Yeah.
I'm sure the Christian leader specifically has also changed quite a bit over your tenure. So can you just give us some historical perspective? What did it look like when you started in 94 compared to what it looks like now, both Christian leader specific, but also just industry wide? Like there's just been so many changes. So can you walk us through that from your perspective?
Well, for example, when I started, I was the assistant editor and I did the body of life news stories and the news briefs, the stuff that Janae was describing. And we got everything multiply. MB Mission would send us paper press releases and I would type them into the computer. And I remember when one of the agencies went to emailing us instead of a print copy. And I just wasn't sure I could adjust to that. That was just too big a change. How is this ever going to work?
Yeah.
And our computer setup at that time required its own office because it was quite took up a lot of space. So the editor didn't have room on his desk for that. So there was a special room designated for designing the magazine. So that's all very different now. I can't imagine having to type in a press release. If I have to type something in now, that is just like, why do I have to do this?
Yeah.
So I have been converted very, very quickly to that. But it just seemed, it was just so different. I remember when we were transitioning from 1999 to the year 2000, and everyone was just in a panic. What's going to happen to our computers? And at that point, our office was in the same building with the MB Foundation, and it was so good that the U.S. conference shared this space because they, of course, worrying about finances and banking, they were on top of everything, and our computers were somewhat connected to theirs, so it was all kind of taken care of. So the Y2K crisis didn't really impact us. But boy, was everybody worried about what was going to happen to our computers when that shift happened. And we were all fine.
Yeah.
I remember the phone ringing regularly. The phone doesn't ring now. People email. Occasionally the phone rings and it's so wonderful to talk to somebody. I like that, but it's also just as simple to send an email to somebody. You can develop friendships over email with a church secretary or a pastor. It can be very personal. I also remember learning that having a disagreement with somebody in a work situation wasn't always wise to do via email. And so I remember sitting down with Don Ratzlaff, who is the editor, going, okay, we're going to have to think about, the kind of conversation you'd have in person with somebody back then doesn't really translate to emailing that kind of conversation. And so, we kind of had to learn a little bit how to adjust those sort of interpersonal conversations we would have with writers or readers, that it didn't quite translate. It took us a while to probably figure that out. And then just watching how churches change, because churches do things differently now too. Churches are really concerned about privacy. And so, the kind of information that they want to have us include in the magazine. Sometimes we've had people whose names appeared in the church news sections, those little notes. For example, they become a missionary in a restricted country, and all of a sudden it's a problem that when you Google their name, they show up in a church note. So we've had to go in and take some of that stuff out to help protect people that are involved in missions and work in other countries. I wouldn't have known that would ever happen.
Right.
So that's been interesting to figure out. And then just how quickly, as we've talked about before, how quickly news is shared. I remember when the tsunami hit Southeast Asia, Oh, there was a
Mhm.
flood of information, and we could really keep readers informed about how that affected the MB communities that were just starting in Thailand then, and how that
Yeah.
changed for them. And we could feel a part of it because we
Mhm.
had email and we could get stuff in the magazine. At that point, we were monthly. So the magazine
Mm.
has gone from being monthly to bi-monthly. So that was one thing that I had to think about, is now that the news department is bi-monthly, news sort of implies that nobody knows this because it's new
Right.
news,
Right.
and weren't able to publish new news anymore. So we had to
Mhm.
rethink what goes in Body Life. So it isn't where you read new news anymore that
Mhm.
you would get on our website and through C-Link, but it's where you can
Yeah.
read, interviews with people that have been recently hired. That makes sense to do in a print magazine,
Mhm.
but not the breaking news that it once could be.
Right.
I can add something there too, Connie. A
Yeah.
lot of times, so for Body Life story ideas, I'm reading bulletins, newsletters. I did a little interesting. I was curious. I thought, how in a 2-month cycle, how many bulletins or email bulletins do I read? And in a 2-month cycle, I counted 472 bulletin emails that I read,
Wow.
magazine cycle. But anyway, I say all that because as I'm reading the bulletins, I will make note, okay, this church does this event every October. Let's
Mhm.
follow up with them next October and see
Yeah.
this again. So we try to make it
Mhm.
relevant in that way. It's old
Uh-huh.
news. They're doing it again, so we can have a different angle or say, here's what,
Mhm.
and then they're looking forward to this in the future. So
That's great. Like, you guys do such a good job with that. Okay, I've got two more questions, and our time's going to go really fast here. I'll try to wrap up here with two more. So another thing that I know you are very intentional about is you try to highlight every district and every issue. You try to have a real diversity of which churches are represented. And I know I work at Ridgepoint, so I'm always a little mindful of, like, I don't want it to be just Ridgepoint and other the big churches that get all the news coverage, but you do a really good job of making sure all the rural smaller churches are equally highlighted, and you do a really good job with that. So can either of you talk about that, just the importance of that and how you're able to kind of balance that? And of course, you want to highlight the cool things that are happening at the big churches, but you
Right.
don't want to do that so much that you undercover the smaller churches. I think you do a good job with that. Can either of you chime in on that a little bit?
I remember getting feedback from in a professional conference setting about our news department, our what do we call church life. It's like,
Hmm.
do your readers really care, like, about these little details, like what the theme was? And it's like, yeah, they really do. We do care about each other, and we want to know the little things. That's part of what we value. And yeah, to some other denominations, that's maybe kind of weird, uninteresting, but in a lot of ways, Mennonite Brethren we think of ourselves as a family. And so it makes sense to know what the other branches of your family are doing. I know that there are some of our larger churches, they're doing so many amazing things, and they can because they're big. But as Aaron
Right.
Box pointed out, USMB is made up of a lot of little churches. And so
Hmm.
what's exciting for a small church to pull off is different than what's exciting for a large church. And so we try to remember that. I attend a relatively small church. Janae now is part of a bigger church. So I think our experience kind of helps with that a little bit. And
Hmm.
we do think carefully as much as we can to cover the different sizes. It was really interesting to me a couple of years ago when we did a readership survey. We asked the churches to describe themselves as part of the readership survey, and all of the churches described themselves as rural, which to me was weird. Like, I think of churches not living in California. I think of, well, California churches are all city churches. Well, that's not how
Hmm.
they think of themselves. They think of themselves as
Right.
being in an agricultural environment, being in a
Hmm.
rural, small environment. Okay, so if we all share that in common, what can we do to reflect that in the magazine? So that's been an interesting challenge. And Aaron is challenging us, I think, also to just make sure that we include all kinds of voices from churches.
Yeah.
Because he sees he's from a small church too. So, small churches do amazing things. It's just sometimes in a little different context.
Yeah, I think it's an area where we have opportunity to grow in it. I think with testimony column, we try to rotate between the districts as much as we can. I think one of the challenges is, being primarily, I'm an English speaker, it's hard to people, non-English speakers. And that's a conversation that we're currently having, is how can we invite more people to the table, so to speak. Something we'd like to do in the future.
Like I said, from my perspective, I think you do a very good job of staying mindful of that. So thank you, because I really value that. Last question. We're going over already, and our time's gone fast here, but I just want to give you both a chance. What's next? I'm sure you spend at least a little bit of time dreaming and looking down the road. I imagine you might be thinking about more web, digital email type things, or what else is down the road for Christian Leader? Or do you have any kind of I'd just love to give you some space to talk about your dreams or what's next.
I would like to see us do a better job of recognizing the diversity we have among us. As Janae mentioned, not all of us speak English, not all of us write in English. So how can we include people for whom English is not their first language? So I would like to make that change. I'd also like us to figure out how to recognize the diversity of opinion that we have. I wouldn't say that Mennonite Brethren are necessarily on opposite sides. We're on the same side, but that doesn't mean we have the same opinions about everything. And so I think the magazine is at its best when it recognizes that diversity and reflects that diversity. And that can be hard to do. So in the future, that's what I'd like to see us figure out how to do a better job of. So we agree about the essentials, but we don't have to agree sort of we don't have to agree on all the little things. And in fact, that diversity just makes us more interesting. God assumes a diversity. That's part of what he created, was diversity of how we look and creation. It's so diverse. So, and verses talk about the diversity that God created. So, God welcomes diversity. It's just hard for us to do that sometimes. So how can we get better within the pages of the magazine as a church family, as a denomination, recognizing that we look different? So sort of from a philosophy point of view, that's what I think one of the goals I would have for us.
Yeah, I mean, we really want to see more be relevant and to see more people engage with the content, but also not for our sake, but for sparking conversation and bringing people together. And I'm excited about some of the chances we have to kind of work together with, Matt, you also do lead pods, interviewing our USMB family. How can we, maybe take content from those episodes? No, we're on an episode. That's funny. But put that into a magazine article or something like that. Just looking for maybe work together more to promote various channels of content. I think we have a lot of opportunity there. We're already seeing some of that, even with something as simple as adding QR codes. I mean, seems fairly simple. Everybody has QR codes these days, but how can we use that more to say, here's an article about Aaron Box, but hey, go listen to this podcast episode that Matt did with Aaron a couple months ago. So I think we have opportunity there too, for just the communication and technology piece too.
Yeah, we don't want to fall behind in technology. It's one of the things I like watching. What did the big players do? If Christianity today can figure it out, and then we can learn from them, or a large denomination, let's let them do it first. When they get the bugs worked out, then we can jump in and learn from what they did. So we want to keep learning about technology and strategies for communicating our stories.
Good. Well, I so appreciate both of what you just said, your perspectives, your hearts, and your motivation behind it. And I should say, you're both individually award winners. The Christian Leader just recently won an award at the Evangelical Press Association. So it's an award-winning publication many times over, and you both have won individual awards yourselves. I just see so much, again, I'm kind of biased since I'm on some of the inside track here, but I see so much value in what you do, and you both not only are excellent writers and editors, but you do such a good job putting all this together. So on behalf of USMB, thanks to both of you for all the hard work that goes into each of these issues. And you're already working on, next fall probably, Connie. So can't wait to see what you're already cooking up. So one more time, ChristianLeaderMag.com. If you're not subscribed to both the print or the C-Link, I encourage you to go check that out. Sign up today. Check out all the hard work that these ladies put out. And really, thanks for your time, both in general, but also today. Thanks for your time, Connie and Janae. Great spending time with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Matt. And one thing you did mention the award. I wasn't sure if I was going to bring that up, but just you did. We wanted to thank you as our writers and our designers. A lot of people contribute to this magazine. It's not just us. So we want to thank you for. We send a lot of emails sometimes. So thank you for reading those, responding to those. Definitely a team effort to make this what it is. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.
The USMB and Christian Leader websites now have translation buttons. With just one click, you can access content in 12 different languages. More than 50% of our USMB churches worship in languages other than English. So making our resources accessible for all is a priority. Try it out today at usmb.org and christianleadermag.com.
Well, hey, thanks again so much for joining us today for this behind-the-scenes look at the Christian Leader, and hope you enjoyed hearing from Connie and Janae as they shared really all that crazy hard work and the really good heart that is behind each issue of that great magazine. So, hey, if you're not already, this would be a great time to subscribe to the Christian Leader to make sure you don't miss the next issue. So again, you can visit christianleadermag.com to sign up for both the print magazine and also for the C-Link email newsletter that they talked about for the more kind of breaking news and updates throughout the year. And hey, if you have an idea for a story, hey, don't be shy. Reach out to Connie and Janae. Like they've said several times, this really is your magazine, and I'm sure they would love to hear from you. If you have suggestions or if you'd even like to write, I encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. So reach out to Connie and Janae. Check out christianleadermag.com for some more of those details. Okay, and as I said at the top, this will be our last episode of the year. So once again, thank you so much for listening, both this week and all year long. It's really my privilege to get to do this with you. So thank you so much for being here. And hey, we don't say this very often, but it would be helpful if you could help spread the word. If you want to give us a rating wherever you're listening right now, text a link to a friend of an episode that you've enjoyed. We love your help as we continue to get the show cranking next year. So if you're listening the week that we're releasing this, it's probably crunch time at your church, preparing all the last minute details for Christmas Eve services or whatever the holidays look like at your church. So again, I know this is a crazy busy time for pastors and church leaders. Your work is so important and valuable, so thank you for your hard work. And once the last service is wrapped up, I hope you're able to really enjoy some time with your friends and family over this holiday season. So once again, thank you so much for listening. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I look forward to seeing you again in 2025 here on Lead Pods.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.